students, today's agenda is to check homework. We'll be learning about equivalent expressions and you will be able to work on 2.4. Today, students will be able to find equivalent expressions by factoring out the greatest common factor, or GCF, and to prove identities true. So in here it says a rectangle has an area of x squared plus 4x. What can the dimensions be? And so if we start drawing a rectangle, what it's saying is that the area is x squared plus 4x. And so in here, what we really need to do is to find the dimensions. Remember that usually one of the dimensions compares to the other. That's what we've been looking at in the previous lessons. And so if we're comparing, let's say, to the width, which would be x, then that would be one of the factors. And then we start dividing the product so that we can find the other factor. And so x squared divided by x is x. 4x divided by x is 4. So that means that the length is x plus 4. By doing this, this was my greatest common factor. And this is the other factor. So this is my GCF. And this is the other. Now, let's see. What that means is that that's equivalent to the area, right? And so the area is x squared plus 4x. But let's check just to make sure that it is true. And how can you do that? What we can do is multiply or use distributive property. So x times x, we get x squared. And x times 4 is 4x. And that's exactly what they gave us. So it is true. What we just did here is to prove a polynomial identity to be true. Okay, prove that a polynomial identity to be true. Okay, and what does that mean? Is that they give us something that is equivalent to something else. We simplify one part of it or factor, like in here we could use distributive property, or in here we can factor it, and by factoring we get this, and at the end we end up with two equal parts. So basically, by doing distributive property, we got that both are exactly the same. That's a polynomial identity. And when is it true? When both parts or both sides of the equal sign are equal, then that means that it's true, a true identity. So now it says, do they form an identity? In here, they're giving us some more identities, and we need to see if they form a true identity. You can either find this with the greatest common factor, or you can do distributive property. Either way, you will want to show that both are equal. If they are equal, then they form a true identity. If not, then they do not form a true identity. And I showed you above that we did distributive property, but since we're doing greatest common factor, I think I want to simplify this part. And so how do you find the greatest common factor? Well, look at all the coefficients and constants. In here, we only have coefficients. Which is the greatest number that can go into both 6 and 2? It would be 2. And if all the terms have a variable, you will get the variable with the smallest exponent. In here we have a 2, and here we have a 1 that doesn't exist, a chiquitito. And so that's the one that we're going to get, the smallest one. Then we open our parentheses and then start dividing. 6 divided by 2 is 3. X squared divided by x is x. Then we go to the next one and we divide first the signs, then the numbers, and then the variables. So positive divided by positive is positive. 2 divided by 2 is 1 that we don't need to put unless that's the number. And x divided by x is also 1. So yeah, we need to put the 1 in there. So whenever this and these are the same, then the answer will be 1, because anything divided by itself will be 1. Like 8 divided by 8 is 1, or 10 divided by 10 is 1. Okay, so now we bring this down. So we have 2x, 3x plus 1. And as you can see, we say yes, yes, they form a true identity. Well, yes, they do for short. Okay, for the next one, again, where we can simplify by multiplying this. And even you can do it 4 times 2x squared is 8x squared. But then we also have to multiply this one. 4 times 4 is 16, which is not. You can do that, but let's just continue with the greatest common factor, okay? What would be the greatest common factor for these two terms? What is the greatest number that can go into both 8 and 4? 4, because 4 goes into 4 one time and 4 goes into 8 two times. Now we look if both terms have x, then we include x, but in here, since this one doesn't have x, then we just open our parentheses and start dividing. 8 divided by 4 is 2, and x squared, we don't divide anything in the variable, so we just have x squared. 4 divided by, positive divided by positive is positive, and 4 divided by 4 is 1. Is it equal to 4 times 2x squared plus 4? No, because in this factor, these two are different. So we say no, because then the question is, do they form an identity? No, they don't. For number 4, we look at the coefficients. We have a 1, a 3, and a 4. What's the biggest number that can go into 1, 3, and 4? It's only 1. And in reality, you don't need to put the 1, okay? Unless you don't have anything else, you do put it. Then we look at the variables. Do we have variables in all of them? Yes. And the smallest exponent is this one that doesn't have it. So when you don't have an exponent, that means that there is a 1 in there. So we put 1x, we only need x, and start with our parentheses. Again, why do we include an x in here and not in here? Because one of the terms does not have x, we don't include it in the greatest common factor. In here, all of them have x, so that's why you put it in the greatest common factor. And we start dividing. Again, let's just remember that we don't need to put the 1 in there, and so we just say x cubed divided by x, x squared. Positive divided by positive is positive. 3 divided by the 1 that we just took out is just 3. And x squared divided by x, it's x. Positive divided by positive is positive. And 4x divided by x is just 4. Because x divided by x is 1, and 1 times 4 is 4. We bring down the other side. And then we check. Do they have the same terms? Yes, so we say yes, they do, because they form an identity. Okay. For the next one, we're just going to factor using the greatest common factors to find what is equivalent. Okay, so what goes into both 9 and 7? It's only 1, but we don't need to put it. Do we have variables on all the terms? Yes, so that will be part of the greatest common factor. And then we start dividing. 9 divided by 1 is 9. X squared divided by x is x. And then positive divided by positive is positive. 7 divided by 1 is 7. Look at it as 7x divided by x, and in division you just cancel similar factors. That will be the answer. Those would be your 2 factors. For the next one, what number goes into all 3 terms? Oh, 5 is the biggest number that can go into all 3 terms. Do we have x on all of them? No, so that's all for the GCF. And then we start dividing. 5x squared divided by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 1x squared, but we don't need to put the 1 as a coefficient. Positive divided by positive is positive. 10x divided by 5 is 2x. Positive divided by positive is positive, and 5 divided by 5 is 1. In this case, as a constant, we need to put the 1. So again, as a coefficient, we don't need to put the 1. As an exponent, we do not need to put the 1, but as a constant, we do need it, okay? And in fact, this can, you can just erase those. That's the answer for number 6. Number 7. What is the greatest number that can go into 24, negative 3, and 6? 3 can go into 24, 3 can go into negative 3, and 3 can go into 6. For the greatest common factor, you can put 3. Do we have x in all of them? Yes. And which one has the smallest exponent? 5, 3, 2. 2 is the smallest exponent, so that's the one that you're going to add in here. So again, we choose the biggest number that can go into the coefficients, but the variable with the smallest exponent, and only if you have that variable in every single term. Okay, now we start dividing. 24 divided by 3 is 8. X to the 5th power divided by x squared is x cubed. Remember that I'm just looking here at, in division, we keep the base and subtract the exponents. So 5 minus 2 is 3. Okay. For the next one is negative divided by positive is negative. 3 divided by 3 is 1 that we don't need to put. And x cubed divided by x squared, it's x. We're just subtracting the 3 minus 2 is 1. Chiquitito, but we don't need to put it. Then positive divided by positive is positive. 6 divided by 3 is 2. And x squared divided by x squared is 1. 1 times 2 is 2, so that's all. Again, if you're not sure that you're getting the right answer, especially with these tricky ones, you can use distributive property and check that they do form an identity. Okay, so 3 times 8 is 24. X squared times x cubed is x to the 5th power. Remember that in multiplication we add the exponents. Positive times negative is negative. 3 times 1 is 3. X squared times x, there is a 1 in there. We add the exponents, so x to the 3rd power. 2 plus 1 is 3. Then positive times positive is positive. 3 times 2 is 6. And x squared, we don't have anything else in here. We just bring down the x squared and check to make sure that they have the same terms. Yes, they form an identity, so you're checking that, yes, they are equivalent to each other. In here, we have a coefficient 1. Both have x, so we just use the one with the smallest exponent. And then we start dividing. X squared divided by x is x. X divided by x is 1. And that'll be all. Again, if you check, is x times x is x squared, x times 1 is x, and there you have it. So this is my greatest common factor, and this is the other factor. Number 9, I'm going to write it down here since I don't have much space, but since we don't have a coefficient in here, that means that the biggest number that can go into all of them is 1. For the x, we get the one with the smallest exponent, so it's going to be the 2, so it's x squared. For y, we have y to the 2nd power, y to the 5th, and y to the 3rd. The smallest one is y to the 2nd as well. They do not have to be in the same term, okay? So x with the smallest exponent is on the 2nd term, but then y to the 2nd power is on the 1st term. And then we start dividing. X to the 4th divided by x to the 2nd is x to the 2nd. We just subtracted 4 minus 2 is 2. Y to the 2nd power divided by y to the 2nd power, they cancel and it's just 1, so you don't need to write the 1. Negative divided by positive is negative. 3 divided by 1 is 3. And then x squared divided by x squared is 1. 1 times 3 is 3. You don't need to write it. Y to the 5th divided by y to the 2nd, you subtract the exponents and you get 3, so y to the 3rd power. The last term is positive divided by positive is positive. 2 divided by 1 is 2. X to the 7th power divided by x squared. You just subtract the exponent. 7 minus 2 is 5. Y to the 3rd divided by y to the 2nd is just y, because 3 minus 2 is 1, but we don't need to put it. And that's all. This is my greatest common factor. And this is the other factor. For number 10, what is the biggest number that can go into 6, 9, and negative 12? Well, it's going to be 3. For x, which one has the smallest exponent? 3, because this one is 5 and this one is 4. So x to the 3rd power. For y, it's 1, 4, and 2. So the 1 is the one that we're going to use for the greatest common factor. For z, z is 2, 4, and 1. So we put z to the 1st power. And we start dividing. 6 divided by 3 is 2. X cubed divided by x cubed, they cancel. Y divided by y cancel. And z squared divided by z, it's 1 only, 1z. Then we go to the next term. Positive divided by positive is positive. 9 divided by 3 is 3. X to the 5th power divided by x to the 3rd is x squared. Y to the 4th divided by y is just y to the 3rd power, right? We subtract the chiquitito. And then, so 4 minus 1 is 3. Same for z. Z to the 4th divided by z is z to the 3rd. Negative divided by positive is negative. 12 divided by 3 is 4. X to the 4th divided by x to the 3rd is x to the 1st power, but we don't need to put it. Y to the 2nd power divided by y is just y, because 2 minus 1 is 1. And z divided by z cancels, and we close it. So those are our two factors, our greatest common factor and the other factor. So this is equivalent to this. This will be the product, and this will be my two factors. For the next part, it says simplify by using the greatest common factor. What we're going to do is to find the greatest common factor of all three terms, numerator and denominator. And so what goes into 3x, 12, and 6? It's 3. But in this case, we're going to write that in the numerator and in the denominator. And then we're going to start factoring. So this basically is our greatest common factor, but now we have to use the greatest common factor on both. And we start 3x divided by 3 is x. 12 divided by 3 is 4. In here, for the denominator, we divide also. 6 divided by 3 is 2, because 2 times 3 is 6. And that's for the greatest common factor, that will be it. And the reason is because we want to cancel that. And we end up with x plus 4 divided by 2. This will be our solution. It will be the simplified form. So this is equivalent to this, but in a simplified form. And how can we check? You can just multiply everything by 3, which is the greatest common factor that we factored out, and start using distributive property with all of them, and you will see that you come back to that. Okay, number 2. Again, what is the greatest common factor for all three? Well, for x, and again, you're going to put it in the numerator and denominator. For y, we don't have y in here, so we cannot include it in the greatest common factors. And for z, yes, we have it in both of them. So we write it, and the smallest is to the 1st power. That's our greatest common factor, and we start dividing. X squared divided by x is x. Z divided by z is 1. We don't put it. Then positive divided by positive is positive. X divided by x is 1. We don't have y in here, so we just bring it over. Z squared divided by z is z. close the parentheses, and now we do the same thing in the denominator. X divided by x is 1. We don't need to put it. Y, we don't do anything with it, so we just bring it over. Z divided by z is 1, so we don't need to put it. And those are our two factors. We can cancel the greatest common factor, and the answer then is x plus yz divided by y. Number 3, the greatest common factor for x is the one with the tiniest exponent, so it's x, and we put it up above and down below. For y, we have it in all three of them, so yes, we include it, and again is the one with the chiquitito. For z, we have it in the denominator but not in here, so we cannot include it in the greatest common factor. We open our parentheses. And then start dividing. X to the 4th divided by x is x cubed. Y cubed divided by y is y squared. Negative divided by positive is negative. X cubed divided by x is x squared. Y divided by y is 1. We don't need to put it. The 1, we just leave it out. X divided by x, it's 1. We don't put it. Y squared divided by y is y, because we subtracted. 2 minus 1 is 1, but we don't need to put it. And then z, there's no z in here. We just bring it over. And my parenthesis was a little too far for both of them, actually. There you go. And so we cancel the greatest common factor because xy divided by xy is 1, so we don't need that. And we're left with x cubed y minus x squared divided by yz. And you can put the parentheses or just leave it like that. Last one. What can go into 2, -4, and 6? It's 2. We're going to put it in the numerator and denominator. For x, do we have it in all terms? Yes. Which one is the smallest exponent? It's x to the 1st power, so we just put it in both of them. And for y, do we have it in all of them? Yes. The smallest one is, well, either one of this is y to the 1st power. So that's going to be my greatest common factor. Then we start dividing. 2 divided by 2 is 1. We don't need to put it. X squared divided by x is x. Y divided by y is 1 that we don't need to put. For the next term, negative divided by positive is negative. 4 divided by 2 is 2. X cubed divided by x equals x squared. Y squared divided by y is y. And close the parentheses. Down in the denominator, 6 divided by 2 is 3. X divided by x is 1. Y divided by y is 1, and we don't need to put those, so that's it. We cancel the greatest common factor because 2xy divided by 2xy, remember that anything divided by itself is 1, and we don't need to write that. And I'm going to have to write it down here. So what are we left with is x minus 2x squared y divided by 3. And so that's equivalent to this, but in its simplified form. This is the end of the lesson. If you can please give us a thumbs up, subscribe around here. This is the link to the entire unit. This will be the next lesson. For now, you're able to do 2.4 and have fun with the greatest common factor.